When the HOA fined me for building a snow-shedding roof, they said I violated community standards. Flying money house, they mocked the design, warned me to change it, and acted like they knew better than engineering and common sense. But then the biggest blizzard in years hit, and suddenly, everything changed. What happened next proved that smart planning beats HOA paperwork every single time. It started with a letter. Not a conversation, not a warning, not even a knock on the door. Just a cold, official-looking envelope stamped with the HOA's logo, slid neatly into my mailbox like a threat wrapped in paperwork. Inside was a fine. The reason? My roof. According to the HOA, the snow-shedding roof I had installed was a violation of community appearance standards. Not unsafe. Not dangerous. Not illegal. Just different. They didn't mention engineering. They didn't mention weather data. They didn't mention the fact that we live in a region where winter storms dump snow by the ton. All they cared about was control. From the very beginning, it was obvious this had nothing to do with safety and everything to do with obedience. The roof was planned for survival, not style. When I designed my home, I didn't do it based on trends or HOA mood boards. I did it based on reality. This area gets brutal winters. Heavy snow loads, ice storms, wind-driven accumulation that sits on flat and shallow roofs until the structure literally begs for mercy. I'd seen it before. Roofs sagging, ceilings cracking, insurance claims denied because preventable damage. So I planned ahead. I consulted engineers. I reviewed local climate data. I studied snow load failures from previous winters. The solution was obvious. A snow-shedding roof with a steeper pitch, designed to naturally release snow instead of letting it pile up. It wasn't experimental. It wasn't reckless. It was proven, smart, and built for the environment. But it didn't match the HOA's idea of uniform beauty. And that was unforgivable. The HOA didn't ask. They assumed. What made the fine even more insulting was that no one from the HOA ever spoke to me beforehand. No inspection visit. No request for explanation. No engineering review. They assumed. They assumed that because my roof didn't look like everyone else's, it must be wrong. They assumed that because it wasn't common, it must be unsafe. They assumed their rulebook outweighed physics. That assumption became a fine, complete with deadlines, penalties, and threats of further action. And suddenly, I wasn't a homeowner anymore. I was a problem. It doesn't match the neighborhood. That phrase came up again and again. Not, it's dangerous. Not, it violates building codes. Not, it puts others at risk. Just, it doesn't match. The HOA wanted sameness, uniformity, control. They wanted roofs that looked good in a brochure, flat enough to photograph nicely, shallow enough to be cheap, and weak enough to fail under pressure. They weren't protecting homeowners. They were protecting appearances. Meetings that were already decided. I attended the HOA meeting. I brought documents, engineering reports, climate projections, load calculations. I explained, calmly, that snow-shedding roofs reduce structural stress, prevent ice dams, and dramatically lower collapse risk. They barely looked at the papers. One board member actually said, "We've never needed roofs like that before." That sentence said everything. They didn't care about need. They cared about precedent. If one homeowner was allowed to think independently, others might follow. And that would weaken their grip. The fine was a message. The fine wasn't about money. It was a warning. It said, "Don't challenge us. Don't outthink us. Don't step outside the lines." Because if they let my roof slide, what next? Solar panels without approval, storm-resistant siding, independent decision-making. The HOA wasn't protecting safety, they were protecting authority. They ignored the climate reality. Here's the irony. The HOA handbook was written decades ago. Back when snowfall patterns were different. Back when storms were milder. Back when climate wasn't as volatile. But they treated it like scripture. Meanwhile, winters had changed. Snowfalls were heavier. Storms lasted longer. Loads increased year after year. My roof acknowledged reality. Theirs denied it. Fix it or pay more. The final notice was blunt. Either modify the roof to match HOA standards, or face escalating fines. They wanted me to weaken my own home to comply with an outdated aesthetic rule. And they didn't care what that meant long-term. If the roof collapsed later, that would be my problem. The HOA would shrug, point to the rulebook, and move on. This was never about safety. If it were about safety, they would have requested engineering verification, consulted building officials, updated standards for winter conditions. They did none of that. Instead, they punished foresight. They punished preparation. They punished a homeowner who refused to gamble with their family's safety just to maintain visual conformity. Control always disguises itself as rules. That's the most important lesson. HOAs rarely say, "We want control." They say, "Community standards, uniform appearance, neighborhood harmony." But beneath those phrases is fear. Fear of losing authority. Fear of being questioned. Fear of admitting they might be wrong. My roof challenged their narrative. And they responded the only way they knew how, by trying to fine it into submission. The storm was coming, they just didn't know it yet. As winter approached, forecasts worsened. Meteorologists warned of record snowfall, long-duration storms, unprecedented accumulation. I prepared calmly. The HOA did nothing. No inspections, no reinforcements, no advisories, just silence and fines. They had their paperwork. I had physics. Conclusion of Note 1. The HOA fine was never about protecting homes. It was about protecting power. They punished intelligence because it didn't ask permission. They punished preparation because it exposed their ignorance. They punished difference because difference threatens control. And soon, very soon, nature was going to decide which approach actually worked. At first, it was just a shift in the forecasts, slightly heavier snowfall than average, longer storm duration, colder temperatures lingering instead of lifting. Meteorologists used careful language, but the message was clear to anyone who knew how to listen. This storm was different. While most people brushed it off as another winter exaggeration, I paid attention. Years of planning my home around real weather, not HOA aesthetics, had trained me to respect early signals. And every signal pointed in one direction. A major blizzard was coming. Preparation versus denial. As the days passed, predictions escalated. Snow accumulation estimates doubled. Wind speeds increased. Emergency advisories replaced casual updates. I watched my neighbors continue life as usual. Cars parked under shallow pitched roofs. Gutters clogged with leaves. No reinforcements. No adjustments. The HOA issued no guidance, no warnings, no recommendations. Their confidence wasn't based on preparation. It was based on habit. They had survived past winters, so they assumed they would survive this one too. No adaptation. No upgrades. No acknowledgement that conditions had changed. Meanwhile, my house was ready, quietly, efficiently, without panic. When the blizzard hit, the first wave arrived at night. Snow fell thick and fast, erasing roads within hours. Streetlights glowed dimly through the white curtain, casting shadows that vanished as soon as they appeared. Wind pressed snow against every surface, searching for weak points. By morning, the neighborhood was unrecognizable. Drifts climbed halfway up doors. Cars disappeared beneath heavy layers. Power lines sagged under the strain. And on rooftops, the real danger began to form. Wait. Snow turns from beautiful to deadly. Snow looks harmless, until it doesn't. Wet snow compacts quickly. Each fresh layer presses down on the one below, increasing the load exponentially. Flat and shallow roofs don't release that pressure. They hold it, absorb it, suffer under it. From my windows, I could see it happening in real time. Roofs bowing slightly, ice forming at edges, gutters bending under frozen mass. Every hour added thousands of pounds of stress. And the storm wasn't slowing down. My roof did exactly what it was designed to do. Then I heard it. A low, rushing sound, almost like distant thunder. I looked outside just in time to see a massive sheet of snow slide cleanly off my roof, breaking apart as it hit the ground in a controlled, heavy fall. No drama, no damage, no stress. The roof shed the snow the way gravity intended. Again and again, as accumulation reached critical levels, the snow released itself naturally. No ice dams, no overload, no danger. The system worked, silently, reliably. Across the neighborhood, failure began. Elsewhere, things went very differently. I heard sharp cracks echo through the storm, wood under pressure. The kind of sound you never want to hear in a blizzard. A neighbor's ceiling sagged visibly by afternoon. Another home developed leaks as melting snow forced its way backward under shingles. Water stains bloomed across drywall like bruises. By evening, emergency lights flickered through the snowfall. Collapsed carports, caved-in porches, fire crews struggling through blocked streets. The HOA-approved roofs were failing, one by one. Silence from the HOA. This should have been the moment for leadership. A warning, an evacuation notice, at least an acknowledgement. There was nothing. No emails, no alerts, no guidance. The same HOA that fined preparation had no plan when reality arrived. Their authority ended the moment the storm began. The weight of proof. By the second day, the blizzard had reached historic levels. Record snowfall, sustained high winds, temperatures too low for melting. Most roofs couldn't relieve the pressure. Snow removal was impossible. Access roads were buried. Emergency services were overwhelmed. And yet, my home stood unchanged. The roof remained clear. The structure remained solid. Inside, it was warm, dry, and safe. Not because of luck, because of design. Neighbors began to notice. People started looking toward my house. Not with anger, not with judgment, with realization. They saw the contrast. One house functioning as intended, others failing under the same conditions. The difference was impossible to ignore. The storm had stripped away opinion and left only evidence. Nature made the decision. No committee vote could override what was happening. No law rulebook could argue with physics. The blizzard had tested every structure equally, and delivered a clear verdict. Smart design survives. Outdated standards fail. After the snow stopped falling. When the storm finally passed, the damage assessment began. Insurance adjusters, contractors, inspectors. The list of structural failures grew by the hour. And there was my house. Standing, unmarked, untouched. The roof the WA find had just passed the harshest inspection possible. Conclusion of Note 2. The blizzard didn't just expose weak roofs. It exposed weak thinking. It proved that safety doesn't come from conformity, it comes from preparation. It showed that rules written for appearance collapse under real pressure. And it turned a fine into evidence. Nature doesn't care about WA approval. It only respects what works. When the blizzard finally loosened its grip, the silence felt heavier than the storm itself. No wind, no falling snow, just a frozen neighborhood, stunned by what had happened. The world looked calm again, but everything had changed. Morning after the storm, I stepped outside for the first time after days of confinement. Snowbanks towered like walls. Shattered branches lay half buried. The air carried that eerie stillness that only comes after destruction. And then there were the houses. Bent rooflines, collapsed sections, tarps flapping weakly in the cold wind. Some homes were no longer livable. Others were one collapse away. And right in the middle of it all stood my house, untouched, stable, intact. It didn't look heroic. It looked correct. The sound of silence. Normally, after any incident, the WA was loud. Emails, meetings, violation notices. This time, nothing. No statement. No apology. No explanation. The same board that had confidently fined my roof was suddenly invisible. Their authority had vanished with the storm. Damage control began, but not the kind that fixes homes. Contractors flooded the area. Insurance adjusters worked overtime. Homeowners stood in shock, staring upward, realizing that the very roofs they were forced to install had betrayed them. The HOA's concern wasn't safety. It was liability. Meetings happened behind closed doors. Legal language replaced confident demands. The rulebook that once felt so powerful was now a potential lawsuit. And still, no one spoke to me. The fine that couldn't be defended. The fine was still on record. Unpaid, unjustified, indefensible. But now, enforcing it would require admitting something the WA couldn't afford to say out loud. They were wrong. Worse, they were reckless. They had punished a design that worked and forced designs that failed. That kind of mistake doesn't just cost money. It costs credibility. Neighbors started asking questions. Quietly at first. Then more openly. Why did your roof hold up? Did you do something different? Did the WA really fine you for that? The story spread, not through announcements, but through realization. The WA hadn't protected them. It had failed them. Experts confirmed what the storm proved. Inspectors didn't need much time. The conclusions were consistent. Excessive snow load, inadequate roof pitch, ice dam formation, structural stress failure. And then, inevitably, your roof performed exactly as intended. That sentence ended the argument forever. The HOA's power was built on assumption. Their silence wasn't accidental. It was survival. Any public acknowledgement would open the door to refunds, repairs, and responsibility. So they chose the only option left. Say nothing. Hope people forget. But disasters don't fade quietly. From enforcement to irrelevance. Before the storm, the WA controlled aesthetics. After the storm, they controlled nothing. Homeowners began questioning other rules, other fines, other decisions. The blizzard had cracked more than roofs, it cracked authority. I didn't celebrate, because this wasn't a victory lap. There was no joy in being right. Neighbors were displaced, families stressed. Repairs would take months. But there was clarity. Preparation isn't arrogance. Independence isn't rebellion. And safety isn't something you compromise for appearances. The fine quietly disappeared. Weeks later, without announcement or explanation, the fine was removed. No letter, no apology, no acknowledgement, just gone, like it had never existed. But I remembered the lesson that couldn't be ignored. My home survived because it respected reality. The WA failed because it enforced fiction. And when reality arrived, hard, cold, and unforgiving, only one of those approaches held up. Final conclusion: rules mean nothing without wisdom. Authority means nothing without accountability. And when nature tests human decisions, it doesn't care who approved the paperwork, it only cares what works.